Welcome to the Armchair Coaching Podcast. My name is Coach Sheffer. I am your host today, and we have another great guest today. But first, if you're watching this on YouTube, do us a favor, hit like and subscribe down below. That will help us grow our community. And if you're interested in listening to this in podcast form, we are available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, as well as many other podcast platforms out there. So today we have another guest. I'm going to introduce him really quick. Coach is a 28-year coaching veteran. He is the head coach and assistant athletic director at Hobbton High School in North Carolina. He is a How Mummy Air Raid disciple. I'm excited for that. You're our first Air Raid guy on the podcast. He has been married to his wife, Abby, for 27 years, has two beautiful daughters. The oldest is a grad assistant athletic trainer at Clemson, and the youngest is a senior finance major at ECU. He is a man of faith, a YouTuber, and a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He is currently finishing up his master's in administration, and I am very excited to welcome Coach Joe Salas onto the podcast. Coach, welcome on tonight.
Hey, man, I'm excited to be here. It was funny when you contacted me. I had just gotten back from a run, and I had listened to your podcast when I was on the run. So and then you contacted me right after that. So it was pretty neat.
Well, I'm glad I have some people out there listening, and thank you for listening. That we appreciate that, and we definitely appreciate you coming on tonight. I'm excited for this one, Coach. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. And the first question is one that I ask pretty much everyone that comes on to the podcast. I'm very fascinated by everybody's coaching story because we all as coaches have our own unique journey, right? Could you go ahead and kind of describe to us your coaching journey and tell us kind of how you eventually ended up where you are now?
I'm gonna abbreviate it. There were kind of three big points in my coaching path that were difference makers. So the first one is, like many kids that you coach and the coaches out there listening, I was raised by a single mom, and she had to work 2, sometimes 3 jobs to put food on the table and pay the bills for me and my brother. And we were they used to call it latchkey kids. We went to school, came home, she was gone, and did a lot of raising ourselves until football found me. And when football found me, it changed everything. And to this day, I can say everything I know about being a man, I learned from football and from football coaches. And, just grace of God, I had fantastic guys, fantastic coaches in rec league, a fantastic high school coach, Max Milligan in South Georgia. And they were all Christian guys, and they cared about kids, and they taught us lessons about more than football. And I had such a great experience in high school with Coach Milligan and his staff that, I was a junior in high school and said, man, I want to be like him. I want to be a high school football coach in a little small town, and I want to make a difference with kids. So that was obviously, that started me on the journey. Then when I played a few years at Valdosta State, and then I was on that very extended college plan where I left school and worked and came back. And well, anyway, when I was finally coming back, Coach Mummy was coming in at Valdosta State, and so I got put my big boy pants on and called him up and said, hey, Coach, you don't know me, but I want to volunteer. And I want to learn the game under you. I want to do all the dirty work and just learn from you. And he was nice enough, one of the few guys in the country during that time who would actually take volunteer assistance. And, of course, I didn't know it at the time, but Coach Mummy was Coach Mummy, and Coach Leach was the offensive coordinator, and Guy Morris was the O-line coach, and Dana Holgerson was a GA. And and Chris Hatcher was the quarterback. So, and there, there's been just a ton of great high school Georgia coaches that have come out of there, and so that obviously changed everything. I was a flex bone guy. I thought I was going to be a Georgia Southern guy when I came there, and it took about 3 months before I was completely converted to throwing it around and being an air raid guy. So obviously, structurally, everything I know about football, I learned from Hal Mummy, and I learned from those coaches, that coaching staff. And then the last one, and this one's, I was kind of debating whether I was going to talk about this one, but the last one was about 5-6 years ago. I got fired, and I got fired, and it was a tough situation. I was a first year guy coming in, and almost immediately all the bells went off and said, this ain't the right fit, man. This is not going to be good. And had a booster club president turn against me, and boom, I get fired with 3 games left in the season. And that's unfortunately at that school, it's happened again since then. But this was the thing, is number one, that, I had my kids there, my wife there. So I had to stay there for the rest of the year as a teacher, which was extremely tough. And, I had to, it kind of forced you every day to look in the mirror and say, how am I going to conduct myself as a man? How am I going to handle this tough situation? So there was some growth in that area, but 4 big things came out of that were almost like, where some of them were life-changing. Is one, we found the GT counter. Up until then we were an air raid team, but the GT counter turned us into, gave us the ability to be a hard-nosed physical football team that we just weren't before that. I found a guy named, this is spiritually speaking, I found a guy named Joseph Prince, who is a preacher in Asia, and had a huge growth in my spiritual life. And I began, and I don't want to say began, but I started chasing hard down this culture journey. And it wasn't called culture back then. And I really, I was kind of I had done a lot in that area, but hindsight 2020, one of the things, I'm a tough, hard-nosed guy, and I'm very demanding of my coaches and my players. But in the past, because I always spearheaded what we now called culture, they always knew that I loved them and I cared about them. And that made the difference. I could be harder on them because they knew how much I loved them and they knew what our mission was. But at this place, it was the first time and last time I had ever, I delegated that role to another coach. We had a good Christian guy on staff, and he really wanted to be the spearhead on that. And I delegated that to him. And what I realized after the fact was, because I gave him the culture piece, he was doing all my stuff. I mean, I gave him all the information. He was spearheading it. But because I gave that role to him, they didn't know how much I loved them. And so then I was just the mean guy that was demanding all the time. And that was an eye opener. I understood after that how important it was that they understand that it's more than football. That because of my experience growing up as a kid and how important football was to me, that's how important it is to me to teach them how to be men. So and we'll get into it, I think, one of your questions later, but, our mission is to teach boys how to be men and build winners for life. And that's everything to me. But at that place, because I had delegated that role, they didn't know that was me saying those words. And that made a difference. And then there was, obviously, when you go through one of those tough situations and then have to stay there for, 7 months after it happens, we had a lot of family bonding during that time, and we grew as a family coming out of it. But those were the 3 probably most impactful parts of my journey that each one of those was just a growth point and a changing point in my career and my, kind of guided my philosophy and how I do things.
Coach, I didn't realize you were at Valdosta when all those other famous coaches were there. So that's pretty cool. So you learned under the originals, right? The OG,
the OG
Air Raid.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you got into it a little bit. You were talking about culture and leadership. Could you dig a little bit deeper into your own, describe your own personal leadership style for the listeners?
culture is everything is my philosophy. You know, because of growing up without a dad and without having someone to teach me how to be a man. And like I said, God graced me that every step of the way I had really good coaches, good men, and they cared about kids. But this was kind of the turning point but they taught us, like most coaches, they taught us good lessons kind of randomly. You know, they would give a good talk at the end of practice, or they would pull you aside, you know, in the hallway and say but it was all random. And what I was really interested in, and I got a lot of this from Randy Jackson and Brian Kane. Those were the two I really pulled. And of course, the Focus 3 guys, you know, I kind of pulled all that together. But our whole deal is, you know, that our mission is to teach boys how to be men and build winners for life. That is our job. Our highest calling as a coach is to teach the kids we coach, to equip them with tools that are going to help them live life and win in life for the rest of their life. You know, that we got 4 years that are going to impact them for the next 40 years. And you know, and I always think about this, and I always tell coaches this, is that, you know, 60 years from now, when you're gone, there's going to be some old men in the amen corner at McDonald's drinking coffee, and they're going to be quoting stuff that you said to them when they were 15, 16 years old. And they're all going to be sharing those stories. So you literally are impacting someone for the rest of their life, long after you're gone. And that's your highest calling. You know, we want to, hey man, I'm about winning championships. And we, you know, I had someone tell me on my podcast, you know, he's a cold-blooded competitor. And I'm a tough SOB. I'm a hard-nosed, competitive SOB. But none of that's more important than giving some tools to kids that they're going to be able to use forever. And, you know, so one of them, you know, we call it the 4 cornerstones. You know, the way you build a culture, the 4 cornerstones: mission, core principles. And we have our 5 core principles. If you follow me on Twitter, I send out a quote every single day, Monday through Friday, and they always fit into our core principles, because our core principles fit to the day of the week. So attitude, leadership, work ethic, toughness, and family, 5 core principles, 5 days of the week. Then the third part is relationships, you know, and I look back sometimes at my early years, and thank God, you know, those guys have contacted me. Kids I've coached early on, they contact me on Facebook, and, you know, and it was impactful back then, but I wasn't enough about building the personal relationships back then. And I wish I would have, but relationships are everything. You know, I got a great quote that says, you know, if you treat your players like soldiers, they'll fight hard for you. But if you treat them like sons, they'll fight to the death for you. You know, it is the relationships that drives everything. And then the last part is process. And that's, you know, that's when we get into the X and O's about how you practice and how you lift weights and how, you know, all those, how you recruit the middle school, all those things are the process of getting better. You know, the day to day of getting better and better. But to me, though, when I came to Hobbton, which, you know, it was the perfect fit. You know, it's just one of those that clicked, you know, just like that other place. Well, I knew immediately it was not, you know, this was not going to work. Well, at Hobbton, it just clicked immediately. But I came in knowing that we don't necessarily have the talent that other teams we play. We didn't, you know, from our opinion, you know, sometimes you got, you know, rose-colored glasses on, but, you know, our opinion, we weren't more talented than anyone we played last year. But I came in with this idea that culture was going to be more important than talent. That if we could build a culture and get guys to believe in what we were doing, and to love each other and to work their tails off, that we could do some great things. And, you know, and that's happened. Now, of course, like everyone, we graduated a great senior class last year, and now we're going to, you know, one of your questions later, you know, about, you know, when your personnel changes, we're experiencing that right now. But, you know, my philosophy is it's about the kids. It's about teaching boys how to be men. There's nothing more important than that.
Well, thank you for that. I've been also been digging into the culture side of coaching a lot more, especially during COVID. I ordered the Randy Jackson books, read them. I've read them twice. They were so good.
Yeah.
And now I'm on board with the culture. At first I thought X's and O's were going to fix the problems, but now I'm on board with the culture building.
Get the Urban Meyer one too, Above the Line.
Yeah,
that's a must-have one too.
I don't have that one on my bookshelf yet, but I'm definitely going to get it. I have one of his. I think it's Urban's Way or something like that. But
the Above the Line one, that's a read it twice, 3 times one too.
All right, I definitely will. And so the next question, we're going to kind of switch gears here. On this podcast, we like to talk a lot about college football. So who are your favorite college teams that you enjoy rooting for? And is there a team that you want to watch, pretty much every weekend if they're on?
I've always, Coach Valdosta State, man, that's the one I got, that's the one I pull for. But I've always been the one, man, I want to see offenses. I'm going to watch people that play an exciting style of offense that I'm interested in learning about. So, I'm up here in North Carolina and you are surrounded by, you got State, you got UNC, you got Wake, you got Duke, you got, you're surrounded by big colleges up here. My wife's a Wake Forest graduate, so I gotta pretend like I pull for them. But I just I like coaches and I like offense and I'm a fan. I'm a fan of college football.
Same here. I think a lot of people see me as either the option guy or a wing T guy because I do kind of rep the old school type offenses a lot, but I used to write a blog called Obsessed with Offense. And the reason it was called Obsessed with Offense is because I love every offense out there, including the air raid. That's another one that I've been studying up on.
I'm the same way. I've got that, the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Coach Joe Salas Air Raid HQ. But man, I put everything up there. I'm fascinated by people who get after it.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'll put option stuff up there. I'll put wing T stuff up there. Anything that's interesting, I always share it to that page. And because man, it's football. It's good. It's all good.
Exactly. So you mentioned your YouTube a little bit ago. So you do run your own YouTube channel. I've seen quite a few of your videos and they are pretty darn good. Could you tell the listeners the story behind how that was all started?
Yeah, I needed a job, so I started the YouTube. I was the D coordinator at it's a school in our county, but it was a different school system. I was a D coordinator there, and I wanted to be a head coach again, so I decided, well, dang, I got all this air raid knowledge. Let me go ahead and give this thing a try. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. I was doing whiteboard videos, and I would video them on my phone, and then my daughter taught me how to upload. I would just upload it straight to YouTube, and then I almost immediately, I was doing it for 3 weeks, and boom, I got a job. And then, Hal was always super open about anything. I mean, you ask him any question, he's going to answer it. Where some people are very secret and guarded about their X's and O's, he never was. So that's how I came up was, you would be open. But as soon as I got the head job, I was like, do I still want to be I still want to be telling all these secrets. And then I was like, I gotta be true to my roots. And he would always tell you anything you wanted to know. So I just kept doing it. And I really, I enjoy doing the YouTube thing. And I really enjoy, I'll be honest with you, last week I had a great young guy on talking about sail route. But then once people don't realize, but when this thing ends, we usually have a conversation afterwards, and that's the after conversations are almost better than the actual videos. And this kid gave me 2 or 3, just unbelievable ideas, things I had maybe began to think about, but he had them all wired. And so, I just learned so much doing the YouTube videos that, from the other people, from the speakers or people will write a comment, we'll begin dialoguing back and forth. And, you know, I just learned so much by doing it. And then when I went over to the pot, you know, my passion at this point, you know, I'm getting older, and my passion at this point is the culture stuff. So then I started the podcast, and that, you know, I said from the get-go, the podcast is, you know, the YouTube channel is for everybody, but that podcast, that's for me, you know, because I'm getting to talk to people about how they do it. And it's fascinating to me to hear how other coaches build their program, and how they're targeting kids, and how they're, you know, how they're trying to build their culture. And it just, you know, it just fascinates me beyond measure. And so I really, you know, at this point, which I'm like you, I put it on the channel, but we send it out as a podcast too. And I'm just fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by hearing people talk about how they build a program and how they build culture. So it's been a neat little journey. And you can testify to this. And you don't make any money doing this. People always ask, you know, are you making money? No, I'm not making any money. It's costing me money. And it costs me a lot of time, but it's just so fun. And like I said, you just you get so many ideas, and you get so many viewpoints, and you build so many relationships that it's just worth it. But no, we don't make any money.
Yeah, my wife, I told her, I was like, you know, maybe one day we get some traction with this and we might make a little bit of money off of it. She's like, I don't care if you make money or not, just keep doing it because you seem happy. You know, it's, I was telling the guys that I do the program profiles with, because I have a group of guys that are typically the same guys each time. And I was telling them, like, you know, this is kind of like therapy for me. It reminds me of, especially the after, like when we stop recording, sometimes I wish we would just keep recording, because, you know, or like do a second recording and have like an after podcast or something. It's the conversations we have in those are sometimes better than the ones that we have on the actual podcast.
I'm with you. And I didn't monetize that YouTube channel forever. And then I finally monetized it because my youngest daughter, she's kind of like my tech person. she was getting aggravated at me saying, I'm doing all the work. So I said, okay, I'm going to monetize this thing, and you'll get all the money from it. And, you know, YouTube doesn't pay you till you get $100. I don't know if she's ever gotten a check from them yet. You know, it's been so, you know, there's no money in our niche. There's just no money in it, but it's just so you learn so much, and it's just fun. So that's the story on YouTube.
Speaking of YouTube, it's weird. I dived into YouTube 3 years ago, maybe, and started doing some stuff. That was before, to describe myself versus now versus back then. Back then, I thought I knew everything. Now I'm a little bit more wised up, and I know that I don't know anything. Right. And so I look and I watch.
Continues as you keep getting older. That still continues.
I look and I watch those old videos, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm so stupid. You know, like, I really wish I could go back and kick myself for making those videos, but it's weird. I had this one weird little stint where I used to have a bigger beard than I do now. And I did some like reviews of certain beard products. And one of those videos is the one that gets the most views. It's got like a couple thousand views, and all the other football ones have maybe like 100 views at the most. And I'm like, what in the world? It's like, okay, you know, maybe I should find your niche. I should have just kept doing that. I don't know.
On the beard niche.
Oh, well, the beard products, they can get a little pricey. So I was doing it for free. I don't know if I could do that for free.
Well, I grew one, you know, when they were all cool. I grew one, and it got so gray. And then I saw a picture of myself. I was like, oh my God, I gotta get rid of that thing. I look like I'm 100.
Mine's weird. Like, my hair is very curly. And so I don't have one. They have those new beard straighteners. Like, it's like a comb that has heat and it straightens out your beard. I don't have one of those. And so it would get to a certain point, and then it would just go poof. And I couldn't take care of it anymore. And it just looked bad. And so eventually I was like, gotta get rid of it. Some people don't realize it. It's actually harder to take care of a beard and make it look nice than it is just to shave it, you know? Oh, well. So let's go. We kind of had our own little
We went down a rabbit hole, didn't we?
That's all right. We got time. So let's talk a little bit about Air Raid. So you learn from the best, you learn from the OGs. What are some of your favorite plays and concepts from the Air Raid offense?
You know, to me, the granddaddy of them all is just the quick screens, the now screens, which fit into any offense. They're probably the first thing that you get good at. And then, you know, we're big stick route people. We love the stick routes because they come out so fat. To me, always early in the season, you know, when your pass pro's not quite up to speed yet, you know, you're trying to get the ball out a little quicker. And then as the season goes and your O-line gets a little better, then we start getting a little deeper on our passes. So quick screens, sticks, and we're kind of famous for our slant shoot combination, which is really not 100% from Howe and Leach. You know, they ran a slant shoot on one side and had a different concept on the other, but we mirrored it and we read it all the way across the field, which is, you know, a little uncommon for a high school team. Usually they're going to look it up and deliver it right now, but we actually read it all the way across the field so we can hit, you know, all 5 receivers basically are live on it. So that's always been my favorite one. And we've been pretty good at that one in a lot of places, and it's got built-in answers. Probably that one became our favorite because number one, it's got answers for everything. You know, if you're playing man, it's got an answer. If you're playing zone, it's got an answer. If your safeties are cheating down trying to rob the slants, it's got an answer. If your corners are getting nosy and chasing the slants inside, it's got answers. You know, so it's just the one play that we kind of developed that we got answers for everything. So that's the one we like the best. But caveat, man, you about can't run that sucker on JV. You know, it's called 7 and 9 to us, and we always joke if you call it on JV, you got to change the name to 7 and 9 Oski because they're about to throw a pick. They just they can't pick up those underneath players. So it's one we kind of save till they get to varsity, and then they get good at it.
I gotta ask, because it's Air Raid, and everyone who says Air Raid says the word mesh. Do you run mesh? And if you do, how many versions of it do you guys run?
We, you know, we've had years where mesh was our best play, and but we've had years, honestly, since I've been at Hobbton, where we call it 3-4 times in a year. You know, so it's one of those plays. When I'm explaining it to people, it is a high investment play, but the plus side of it is once you get it taught, you've really taught all the important techniques of the offense. You've taught kids how to sit in windows, how to run versus man. You've taught them, you know, the most important concepts of the offense are all kind of encapsulated, you know, what's that word I want to use? Encapsulized into that one play. I didn't quite say that right, did I? It was close though. But anyway, right. You was close enough. So you get the idea that it just teaches all the concepts, but we don't run. We had, matter of fact, this is sad, but we had the Coug, you know, what we call Coug, which is the inside mesh and the outside outs, basically the way that Leach runs it now. And we had a butt kicker of a second round opponent. They were like undefeated for 3 years in a row, had won the last 3 state championships. But they were playing a defense that we liked what they were doing. And we were going to eat their tails alive with that Coug play. And we practiced it all week, and it was looking like $1 million, and we were hanging our hat on it. And then the first series, my quarterback goes out there and gets hurt. So we had to put our JV quarterback in there. And of course, it didn't go much. It didn't go very good after that. But so the one we were finally waiting, I mean, we were going to throw that thing 15, 20 times in that game. And he got hurt in the first series. So that was the end of that. So I probably don't have a single clip of us completing a 92 Coug for the whole season.
Yeah, that quarterback's the one who's going to run the show there. So that's a tough one.
It was those terrible ones where, our offensive lineman got knocked over because their D-line was gigantic. Our quarterback tripped over him, and then 2 fat guys fell on top of him and hurt his shoulder. So I was like, oh, great.
That's not good. So as an offensive line coach, I know this is not a question that's on the actual script. I just kind of thought of it. As an O-line coach, I've always been kind of interested in the air raid system, maybe specifically your system. How much of practice time is committed to pass block and pass pro for the offensive line? Because I feel like if you're going to throw it quite a bit, you're going to have to work on pass pro quite a bit too, right?
As an O-line coach, you would love air raid practice because you literally have about 45 minutes every day for you. That's not normal. And then you split that pretty much half and half between run and pass. But the big drill, and it's hard for non-air raid people to buy into this drill, but the one-on-one pass pro drill, we do 10 minutes of it every single day from the first day to the last day. And that's the magic in the bottle, and it's hard for other, guys who aren't brainwashed into the air raid. They look at it and say, you're just not getting enough reps out of that thing. But the reps are so high quality and it makes such a big difference. I used to, the deal. O-line, you know the pain. O-line gets all the fat kids, and D-line gets all the studs. And we'll go out there at the beginning. You're in August. You're getting ready, and those studs are just destroying those fat kids, just destroying them. And then in about 2 weeks, it starts evening up. And then go another 2 or 3 weeks, and then fat kids start winning. And by the time you get into conference play, when we go to that pass pro period, I mean, D-line surrenders. I mean, them fat boys grab hold of them and lock them up, pinch their elbows in, and them guys surrender. That it is it is 360 flipped. I would say it's like one of those stories where the little dog chases the big dog up onto the porch. That happens. You see it visually happen, and it's because of that drill and the work that, because they have so much time to work technique and because you're so focused on technique. But it's just a beautiful thing to see, from day one when them studs are just demolishing them poor fat kids to 3 months later when them fat kids are dominating their tails every single day in that pass pro drill. And when you're an air raid guy, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. I was talking to an offensive line coach earlier who was under the air raid. He was telling me, I actually, like you said earlier, I'm learning more through this podcast than I thought that I was going to get out to the public, right? So I definitely stole about 10 different pass pro drills that he was talking through. We're a spread team up here. We're more of a power spread, so we run it more than 60-70% of the time because we have a stud athlete at quarterback who's just really fast. Mm-hmm. And so we're more like the Auburn, Clemson, those types of teams. But I'm going to try to do a little bit more pass pro this year because we have bigger boys up front than we've had in the past. And so we're going to try to do a little bit more of that this year. And they just really haven't had much practice with pass pro, at least not what I've seen. So that's what I'm going to be looking into more this year. So we kind
resource. Shane Dular is down at I think it's Forest Hills High School in South Carolina. Best offensive line coach I've ever been around, and he was the one. He coached for me forever, and he would take the rejects. Everyone's rejects end up on O-line, and he would turn them into machines by just being he's a drill master. And then he would own that period. And that period has to be dominated by the O-line coach. It's not the D-line coach is there, but it ain't his drill. That's the O-line coach's drill, and he dominates everything about it: the tempo, the reps, everything that happens in that thing. But he's the best in the business, in my opinion. And talking about being able to run the ball out of a 2-point stance and being able to pass pro, he's the man.
Yeah. All right. So we mentioned it a moment ago. What are some ways that you would adapt your offense for players of different skill sets? For example, when you get a different quarterback. So let's say one year you have a passing quarterback and the next year you have more of a running quarterback. How would you kind of adapt your offense to that?
Really haven't utilized a running quarterback until probably the last maybe 5 years. And this past season, of course, this kid's graduated. He's down at Charleston Southern playing safety. But he was our quarterback last year, and he rushed for 1,500 yards and threw for over 2,000 yards. And then the tailback rushed for over 1,500 yards. So we actually ran for more yards than we threw for last year because we had so much talent in the backfield. And, so I'm all in on, it used to be all we wanted was that tall thrower. And now, I'm like everyone else. I want that athlete that can be, just has more dimensions to them. But we're experiencing it right now. We're going back in time. We've got a kid, our starter this year, probably pushing 6'2", growing up. His arm's getting better and better. He's getting better every day, but he is a thrower. He is not a runner. And so play calling wise, and I think that's, we're not going to change scheme. We're not one that changes our schemes based on our personnel. We're air raid. But, obviously we ran the counter 50,000 different ways last year, and we ran tailback counter and quarterback counter and read counter. And, when RPOs off the counter, we did everything we could to utilize that guy's talent. But it all comes down to what plays you're going to call. We're obviously quarterback counter is not going to be a big play for us this year. And we're really not sure if the RPOs are going to be a big play for us, because we changed the RPOs to where the quarterback's running it. So that might not be a big play for us this year, even though he's pretty good at reading that play. But it just comes down to, how you going to make your money. We're going to have to make our money throwing the football this year and utilizing our tailback. And we found one of those. I found a guy through my YouTube channel who taught me a different version of inside zone. So we hadn't run inside zone in forever. And he taught me a version that's almost like a gap scheme. And so we're going to utilize that. And, we're just going to, it's just the plays you call. You're not going to be calling quarterback runs. Obviously you're going to be throwing the football. So where that quarterback last year, he was almost 4,000 yards versus of offense. We still want that as a quarterback, but it's going to be more through the air than it is with his legs.
So one of the questions that I've had some discussions with other air raid people on Twitter. One of the discussions that a lot of people tend to have is, what do you do when you have a guy who is a tight end? So a lot of guys are like, we're sticking him on defense. That's all he's going to play. And some of the guys are like, no, we're going to put him in at tight end, put his hand in the dirt, and we'll play him. What are your kind of viewpoints on whether or not you have a tight end type kid? How are you going to use him?
We've never had a true that body. That body's so unique. We haven't had that body. We've had some taller kids, we've had some bigger kids, and we didn't change anything. But if I ever had a Gronk that we didn't need on defense, most likely, he's going to end up he's going to be a D end or something. But if we had one that we could keep on offense, then to me, scheme wise, it doesn't change anything. He's in there at a true tight end position, running the exact same stuff he would be from a flex position. So to me, it'd be a nice problem to have. But I've just never. Even I've been at big schools and we didn't have that body. And the truth is, when you have someone that's close to that body type, he ends up on defense just by, because we're a two platoon. Mm-hmm. So we lose the draft on those kind of kids, especially if he's got some toughness to him. but scheme wise, I think it fits no problem. You just put them in there at a true tight end, and you add a dimension to your schemes that you didn't have before.
The last couple of years here, I've been on the defensive side of the ball, coaching linebackers, and for whatever reason, it seems that the hardest offenses to line up to are the ones that have one of those true tight ends, hands in the dirt. It's hard to line up against that guy and know what you're supposed to do against him. So if that ever happens in the air raid, I'd say go for it. But
who wouldn't?
Yeah,
you got a Gronkowski. Come on, man, you're gonna get, and especially, heck, you got the ability to play him attached most of the time, and then still put him out. So, yeah, I think that'd be an awesome problem to have.
All right, so I
just never had it.
Yeah, I asked this of the old school coaches. It's a question that I think that it might pertain more towards a guy who runs like a wing tee, like the old school wing tee. You know, those offenses, it's hard to sell to the parents and the players, right? Because what they're seeing on Saturdays and Sundays is throwing the ball, you know, spread offense, throwing the ball. But I imagine sometimes you do kind of have to sell that, you know, to a community, sell the air raid to the community sometimes. So how would you sell your offense to your players, the parents, and the community in your area?
I hate to be I'm screwing this question up for you, but I just don't I don't have to anymore. You know, I remember back in the day we would sell the excitement of it, and we still, and even today we'll get someone, you know, up in the stands hollering, "Run the ball," you know, like we're gonna say, "Oh, okay, well, you know, that's not gonna happen." But you know, it's probably been a long time since we even thought about trying to sell the offense. Nowadays, all my time is spent on selling culture, and it's selling the importance of the lessons we're teaching, and it's selling the parents, and particularly the moms. Think about today's game, and you know, you haven't heard a lot about it during this whole COVID thing, but you know, the whole concussion thing was, you know, the soccer moms and all that. So almost all my time is spent on selling the game of football and selling the culture that we're building, and we just don't have to anymore. You know, we're doing what they're seeing on TV now. They're, you know, when they're playing Madden and they're playing NCAA, they're playing air raid offenses. You know, so we just don't have to do it like we have in the past. But even in the past, I didn't, you know, like when I, you know, I'm old enough now. Like when I started in Georgia, there was me and one other high school coach in the whole state of Georgia running air raid. So, I mean, I've been there where they thought I was crazy, but it was just so long ago. You know, to nowadays, everything's about selling the game, how important it is, and selling the culture that we're building, and the values that we're teaching, and making the parents understand that you know, we're Wildcats, and you know, when at our parent meeting, you know, we say, you're not a fan, you're a Wildcat. You know, we're in this thing together. You know, you're not watching something on TV. You're watching the results of a whole lot of hard work and dedication from your son, and it means a lot to him. And when we lose, we're all sad. We all feel like crying. When we win, we're all proud. But whether we win or we lose, whether we fly or we crash, we're going to do it together, because one of our core principles is family, and family has each other's back no matter what. You know, and I heard, probably all of the coaches have heard the one about the cockroaches and the ants. You know, and I grew up in that situation where, you know, you go into the kitchen late at night and you flip on them lights and them cockroaches scatter everywhere. But them ants, they march together no matter what. And that's how we are. You know, that we got to have each other's back. We got to be all in. We got to be a brotherhood. And there's nothing more important than that the loyalty and the bond that's built in this game is like no other. And there's nothing, when them lights start buzzing on Friday night, you know, I pity the guys and I pity the guys who, that when you meet them, you'll meet an adult, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I played a little baseball," or "Oh yeah, I was a basketball player." I pity those guys. I pity the ones that never experienced Friday Night Lights and never experienced the heat of the summer, and then the blood, sweat, and tears that go along with building something that's bigger than you, and yet it is important, and you're a key part of. There's nothing like that. And I know all the sports are great and all the sports are important, but there ain't nothing like football, brother. There ain't nothing like it.
Well, I'll let you know you did not mess that question up. I thoroughly enjoyed that answer. So this is going to be the final question for you tonight. I won't take up too much more of your time. Do you have any final thoughts? There's a lot of coaches like us who aren't having a football season, and we're dealing with all the COVID restrictions, and there are positives out there, and we kind of had this discussion on the things that we're able to do now in our state before the podcast. But there's a lot of coaches out there who are struggling to find positives in this situation. Do you have any words of wisdoms for those coaches out there?
Well, the first one is, you're in Virginia and I'm in North Carolina, and we're actually following the Virginia plan. So we went from March until 2 weeks ago, where we couldn't put our hands on our kids. We Zoomed so much, I didn't even know what Zoom was before this thing started. And we Zoomed so much with our kids. I think they'll probably have nightmares about Zoom, but we kept the contact thing going all the way through. We had a virtual spring practice, get you some of that, 2 weeks of spring practice. So it's been tough on everybody, but it's so dang important. And, it's important to me that we respect this thing, that it is dangerous, and that, I wish we would have done a better job of everyone pulling together nationally. Sometimes I hear people say, if you just could come into my locker room, you would understand how this country should be running right now, because, in our locker room, everyone's the same. And everyone's important, and everyone plays a key role. And when things get tough, we pull closer together. We don't break apart and start fighting, and that's what football is it teaches you, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, but the tough pull together, because we're pack animals. This ain't a stray cat sport. This is a pack animal sport, and we're better together. So I guess my final thoughts were, kids need football, man. And really our country needs football, but kids need football. And I heard this quote the other day: life isn't all about football, but football is all about life. And there's things that get taught in this game and experiences kids have in this game that think about it. The typical high school kid will graduate from high school never having committed to anything if he's not an athlete. That there is no commitment, and there is no sacrifice, and there is no patience for the process of getting better day by day. If they're not playing sports, and in particular, I think football is the best one, but all sports teach this, that that you got to invest before you get the return, and you got to be patient, and you got to support your team, and you got to be a team guy. Those are all keys that I think, kids need football, and, boys need this game. I think I've said it at the beginning, the highest calling for a coach is to teach boys how to be men, to give them some tools that they're gonna take the rest of their life. And we do a thing, we call it circle the wagon. We do it in the locker room right before we go on the field. And when it's a mantra that I say it and then they repeat it. And one of the things is, it says, good things and bad things will happen tonight. We're prepared for both. A man's got to know that. That football is just teaching you the toughness that it's going to take to get through life. It's not about losing a game. It's about what happens when your wife comes home with a bad report from the doctor. What happens when the mortgage is due and you've been unemployed? What happens when you get fired? What happens when COVID hits and the new business you started gets knocked out before it even gets started? Life is tough, but if you are tough, life gets a lot easier. But if you are sensitive, life gets a lot tougher, and the toughness of the game and the beauty of the game and the loyalty of the game is something our kids gotta experience that. That if you got a kid that played football in a good program, that guy's gonna be a better human than he was without it. And that's biased. I'm a football guy, but that's reality. That was me. I was a kid bouncing around with no direction, and then football found me and it changed everything. It turned me into who I am today. And it's important to me that I at least tried to give that to other kids, whether they have a dad or not, man, they need what we got. And it's our job to make sure they know that we love them and we want them to be a part of us.
That was pretty powerful, Coach. Thank you. I appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and I'm not going to take up any more of your time, Coach, but I really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having me, man. I was looking forward to it.
No problem. This has been the Armchair Coaching Podcast, and this is Coach Sheffer signing out.